Sergio Perez's resistance in the midst of recent news about his Red Bull future is admirable, but does not match reality, at least at the moment, given another qualifying and race setback at the British Grand Prix. This in a weekend where it was leaked that Perez is now below his performance clauses and only has until Spa to save his seat. Could we see Perez being replaced this summer? And who will take his seat? Perez's skid into the gravel in Q1 resulted in an early retirement and 19th place on the grid for Sunday's Grand Prix. After switching to slicks on a drying track, Perez rectified a wobble on his outlap at Copse and took to the runoff where he progressively lost control. The rear came around and he crashed backward into the gravel. "I put my hand up. I effed up today. Tomorrow is a new day," Perez said on Saturday. "Really, really tricky. Very difficult, especially in the beginning," Perez said of qualifying. "As I was trying to warm up the tyres going into turn 9, Copse, when I downshifted, I basically lost the rear end quite badly and I went out of the track on cold tyres, and it was completely sunk of water outside of the track, so I just ended up going into the gravel. I couldn't stop the car, I couldn't go straight. A very unfortunate incident." However, Perez's blunder, which has culminated in one top 10 start in the previous 6 Grand Prix, is not an unusual incident. And to make it worse for him, it comes at a time where he faces the threat of losing his Red Bull seat. Perez only signed a new Red Bull deal to the end of 2026 a month ago, but it is a 1+1 with performance conditions, and Red Bull has demonstrated a willingness to drop drivers at any time if necessary. His form had already deteriorated by the time the new contract was revealed, which shocked many, despite team manager Christian Horner insisting it made absolute sense at that point in time. Horner remarked that "we thought the contract would help, but the decline has continued relentless." "This is a sport where there's no hiding," Horner said at Silverstone, "particularly with Max Verstappen as your teammate. He knows he's being measured against the very best, and we need him up there supporting Max because there's 2 McLarens now up there. There's 2 Ferraris, there's 2 Mercedes, and we need there to be desperately 2 Red Bulls." That is why there are rumours inside the Red Bull camp that Perez may not be retained after all. Multiple publications have leaked that replacing him with Daniel Ricciardo or Liam Lawson in 2025 is not out of the question. But even worse for Perez, these clauses also make a mid-season change as possibility, and this would be considerably more shocking. Perez stated that the rumours had nothing to do with his qualifying blunder, that he is fully focused on my job, and that his practice speed on Friday was more indicative of his performance level this weekend. But then came Sunday, and Perez was unable to capitalise, finishing 17th, trailing only Zhou in what was most likely the 3rd quickest car of the weekend. For comparison, his teammate finished 2nd and almost 1st in the identical car. However, Perez began from the pit lane after switching engines, but still, he disappointed. So to add to all these rumours, Red Bull decided that Liam Lawson will be testing the RB20 this week at Silverstone. And Liam Lawson's post-British Grand Prix test of a 2024 Red Bull Formula 1 car marks the start of a critical few weeks for the team as it considers whether to replace Sergio Perez mid-season. Red Bull has stated that it desperately wants Perez, who has been in bad form for some time, back at the head of the F1 field. Another race weekend has gone at the British Grand Prix, with Max Verstappen racing alone against growing resistance, constantly fighting with 2 McLarens and 2 Mercedes. Perez was not in contention since he was eliminated in Q1 after spinning into the gravel in damp circumstances in qualifying, and then failed to gain points in a terrible race in which an early gamble on intermediates backfired starting from the pit lane. His form has been terrible for several races, even before a new Red Bull deal was revealed ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix, which theoretically keeps him at the team until the end of 2026. However, there are clear performance objectives to reach, and Perez is falling short of them, forcing Verstappen to battle alone at the front as Red Bull faces a greater danger from competing teams. Perez has 15 points in the previous 6 races, and only Ferrari's poor record has kept Red Bull from falling apart. However, McLaren and Mercedes have collected the most points in recent races, and with 12 Grand Prix remaining, there will be a genuine constructors' title battle. That means Perez's recent failure at Silverstone reinforced the fact that Red Bull lacks a car advantage to support an underperforming second driver. It's something we're acutely aware of, that to win the Constructors' Championship you need both cars scoring, said Red Bull team boss Christian Horner after the British GP. If Perez does not show his ability to respond to that challenge before the summer break, the idea of a driver change at F1's top team becomes more feasible for this year, not only in 2025, as the team views this as a last resort but is regarded to be an acceptable alternative. According to Horner, Perez understands that not scoring points is unsustainable. He knows his role and his target. After Sunday's British Grand Prix, Perez confessed that the final 2 races before the break were crucial for him. "I know where I am in terms of contract and that sort of thing," he said of the speculation around his immediate future. "I cannot let it be a distraction. I need to focus on the next few weekends, which are the priority, together with the team to get out of this difficult period." The following 2 weekends will include the Hungarian and Belgian Grand Prix, with the latter potentially determining Perez's destiny. According to rumours in the paddock, Sergio Perez must not be more than 100 points or 5 places in the Drivers' Championship behind teammate Max Verstappen following the Belgian Grand Prix in order for a purported release clause to take effect, if Red Bull decides to activate it. After the conclusion of the British GP, Perez is currently 137 points and 5 positions behind Verstappen, with Russell and Hamilton only 7 and 8 points behind him, so it's looking like he will fail on both instances if he keeps underperforming in the next 2 races. So, despite the fact that Perez signed a 2-year contract extension with Red Bull earlier this season, the driver's subsequent performance appears to have prompted the team to consider all of its alternatives for who should partner Max Verstappen in the future, both this season and beyond. Before the British Grand Prix, team boss Christian Horner cautioned Perez that he would need a big race after failing to advance from the first qualifying session. The warning came shortly after rumours circulated about a possible mid-season seat swap, with Daniel of VCarb elevated to the top team. However, Danny Rick's role has also been called into question, with Helmut Marko stating that shareholders want the team to revert to its beginnings as a driver development program. Liam Lawson might be promoted to Daniel's position. In terms of who may replace him, Daniel Ricciardo has been given a similar timescale to bolster his case at Red Bull, although Lawson may be in a better position. Lawson is preparing for a 2024 Red Bull test this week as part of a promotional event at Silverstone, which Horner attempted to downplay, but it will assist Red Bull assess his readiness for the top squad. Remember Daniel's promotional event and secret test from last year? This resulted in De Vries getting cut for Ricciardo to replace him. This could happen this year again, but Lawson replacing Perez at Red Bull, skipping the junior team. Horner, who could not hide Perez's horrible weekend after the race, said only that Lawson's tests had been scheduled for a while, so they're not something that has just sprung up. When questioned about changing the lineup, he did not rule it out. "Of course Checo is under pressure," Horner added. "That's normal in Formula 1, and when you are under-delivering, that pressure only mounts." He's aware of that, he knows that. And this weekend nothing has really gone his way. Lawson has proven himself worthy of a true F1 chance, having stepped in for the injured Aussie for 5 races last year and performed excellently. Red Bull must decide whether or not to put him in one of its cars by September. Otherwise, he will become a free agent. The initial plan was to put him at RB full-time, but Ricciardo might maintain his spot with Yuki Tsunoda even if he is not seen as a viable Perez backup, and now there may be a need for Lawson to cover a position higher up the food chain. Ricciardo had recently been stronger than Tsunoda, although he has struggled in the British Grand Prix. The Aussie felt that was mainly because the team handled qualifying poorly in mixed conditions, but he was also just a bit off Tsunoda, who scored a point in 10th all weekend. In terms of a Red Bull Racing opening, Daniel stated that F1 has become more Hollywood in recent years due to the wild storylines around it, but he has no confirmation he would be anywhere else in the second half of the year, and is not in a position to say that, think that, or predict that. As a result, he declined to make any predictions about what would happen in the driver market. However, he conceded that crazy things may happen in Formula 1, and Red Bull's forced mid-year replacement at its top squad would be one of the more unexpected turns in recent memory. What do you think? Will Perez be fired during the summer break? And could Red Bull take a leap of faith with Lawson if his testing results turn out to be very competitive this week? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.